For today's video, we're going to be having a look at the Fire type in the Gym Leader Challenge format and giving a quick overview of what it looks like, what the general staples are, and a couple of deck lists as we get into the start of the year in 2024. What is the Gym Leader Challenge? Well, it's a fun format created by Andrew Mahone. You can often see this at side events of regional and other high-level tournaments. There are a good amount of online tournaments being played on Play Limitless, as well as webcam battles on Discord, and simply it's a fun format, an alternative to the expanded or standard formats that we have in the game right now. You can't earn championship points from the Gym Leader Challenge, it is just for fun, but the gameplay is very different to the standard format, and that's because of these 4 crucial restrictions that we have imposed on ourselves in the Gym Leader Challenge format. The first of which is that you have to pick a type, and your entire deck has to be of that one type of Pokemon. That means we are basically cosplaying as a gym leader. The second restriction is that we have a maximum of 1 copy of each card in our deck, excluding basic energy. Similar to Commander format in Magic the Gathering, it's been adopted in GLC. It creates some interesting resource manipulation, exploitation, and management throughout the game, and it enables much more flexibility and creativity within deck building, rather than having a 4 restriction on cards where you just put in the absolute staples, maximum copies, and just run with it like you would in a standard format game. Hopefully this also creates much more unique gameplay experience, which is part of the fun, really. The card pool is massive. We can use cards released from all the way back in black and white onwards, which means we have over a decade of cards to choose from. And finally, we cannot play A-Spec or rule box cards in our deck, which means it's all single prizes that don't have a rule box. There's also some Prism style like Stadiums and A-Spec cards. They are not legal for play. Notably, you can use ancient trait Pokemon as well as amazing rare Pokemon, as these do not have a rule box specifically. The final thing to be aware of is that there is an active ban list, and you can see on the bottom of the screen the current ban cards. It's a very restricted ban list based on how large the card pool actually is, but this has really been the sort of most problematic cards that have been discovered through gameplay, or overall just create less fun environments for the formats. So every now and then I do recommend checking the ban list just to make sure you're up to date. This typically doesn't change unless there has been a new set released, making potentially new combinations more powerful. So here's a quick cheat sheet of the general staples that you can find in the GLC format. I've tried to compartmentalize these into a few separate categories here to make it easier when you are constructing your own decks. First of all, gusting and switching outs, these are all pretty integral in any deck list, as are the sort of the most premium supporter cards. This combines good draw power with hand disruption, and Versus Seeker being a great way to recover any of these is obviously very powerful. Searching options are integral to any deck in the format just to get your Pokemon into play. And they're actually more premium in this format because, of course, you only play 1 copy of certain cards, so having immediate search options is going to be really important to get your strategy online. Similarly, recovery is even more premium when we only play single copies of cards. If we have a very strong attacker in the deck or a vital piece in terms of your engine, recovering this if it's targeted by the opponent is obviously important. Equally, prize cards are more important to have access to because, again, you can have integral pieces that find their way into the prize cards, so having access to these is going to be even more important than you would think in standard. We have a handful of pretty useful tools. This is just a very short list, but these are some of the strongest ones that we have available. Some nice consistency boosting item cards, and Field Blower, even though it's not a consistency card, is very versatile in that there are some really important tools to get rid of, as well as Stadium Wall, which is rife. There aren't many stadiums on the slide right now, but that's because there are many type-specific stadiums that people will incorporate into their deck list and sometimes could be a big part of their overall strategy. So this is almost always worth including in deck lists. I think it's a very valuable card. We have some good energy searching options, which don't sound like much, but are great deck thinners in general and gives you some nice value. And down here we have Arven and Guzhala. I think these combine to be a pretty nice package that is almost universal. Both Arven and Guzhala can be great ways to not only fill our bench up, but also get them evolved pretty early in the game as well. So there will be a number of archetypes that actually lean quite heavily into this sort of package, having the likes of Tag Call, Pokegear in their deck list to really give yourself good odds of hitting one of these supporters early on, because it can be one of the better starts in the game, similar to going for like a Bridget or Bull Guy style play in the opening stages. It's a bit more DIY, and there are some pieces that could be prized, of course, but it can create some really powerful board states with multiple evolutions ending on your first turn. Onto the specific fire support then, we have notably a lot of really good energy acceleration supporters. That's kind of the identity of fire if I had to give it anything. It's that we really love manipulating basic fire energy. We can get them into play very easily via Welder, Blacksmith, and Mela as well. Kiawe is a little bit of a slower one because it does end your turn. Kindle is kind of the exception right now, where it's not really helping you accelerate energy, but it can be a decent tutor card. I think most of the time this falls under the bar of playable, but the support for fire energy doesn't stop there because we can get them out of the deck very quickly with Giant Hearth and Fiery Flint in addition to Professor's Letter and Earthen Vessel. We have decent recovery from Fire Crystal. It's a +1 on energy retrieval, which is always pretty nice. And we have the Scorched Earth, which could be an extra consistency bonus for us, or Magma Basin, which is yet more energy acceleration that we have at our disposal. There's also a couple handy special energy cards. The Burning Energy can be solid if we have some attackers that like to discard energy from themselves, which we'll get onto in a moment. And also there's the Heat Fire Energy, which is a solid +20 hit point buff. Even though these special energy are quite solid, because we have such great synergy with basic energy, they're typically going to get the nod over some of these specials. Let's have a look at some of the key engine Pokemon that we have in Fire. First of all, for some draw and consistency options, Magcargo with that smooth over, allowing us to put any card to the top of our deck, is a fantastic one. Typically, it has to go alongside some of these other drawing Pokemon, or it could be used alongside a number of item cards, like Trekking Shoes, like Switching Cups, like Judge Whistle, Acrobike. These sorts of cards can allow Magcargo to thrive on its own, but typically I feel like it's better off with one of these partner cards where you'll use Smooth Over first, then one of these abilities after the fact. Roast Reveal again has synergy with basic Fire Energy, so discard 1, draw 3 is really solid on a stage 1. A Mystical Fire, once during a turn you can top up until you have 6 cards in your hand. Again, a really nice onboard Iono/End proofing mechanism. And Delphox can come in with that Blaze Ball attack if need be as well, which sort of sets it apart from the other stage 1 options that we have here, where it can get into the mix if it really has to. The Battle Sense Charizard kind of combines an attacking threat and a decent draw ability as well. Battle Sense is a bit of a riskier one to use because you're only getting to keep one of the top 3 cards and then you have to discard the others, and that's actually quite painful in GLC when you only have single copies of cards in the deck, but you can try and mitigate for this with different recovery options coming into your deck. That Royal Blaze does a 100 base threshold, but if you have a Leon in your discard pile, it does 150 for 2 fire, and again, that's really, really efficient. Even though you can only play that one copy of Leon, it shouldn't actually be that difficult to discard the Leon, and then suddenly the Charizard is doing a really decent threshold as well. Typically though, I think the Pokemon Go Charizard takes precedent here. It has the Burn Brightly ability, which turns 1 fire into 2 fire when it's attached to your Pokemon. There are many fire Pokemon which have really expensive attack costs, so having Burn Brightly to cheapen those costs, or really just make the most of the likes of your Welder and Blacksmith for real Power Spike plays, is a really nice option. It also has a Flare Blitz attack, which does 170. It looks super expensive, but of course we have the Burn Brightly, so again, it's just a 2 energy attack cost here, as long as your abilities are online. For some great utility stage 1s here, Ninetales can provide some strong gusting with that 9 Temptations. You discard 2 fire to pick up one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Oftentimes, fire decks don't have the luxury of choosing when to Guzma or Lysander all that frequently because they are so focused on using Blacksmith and Welder, so having a Ninetales in your deck list can give you more control over your opponent's board. Armarouge has the Fire Off ability, allowing us to move energy from our bench Pokemon onto our active, which means we can be a little bit more flexible with our attacking options throughout the game. And Rapidash's Heat Boost allows us to discard a fire energy from hand to deal an additional 30 damage to our opponent's active Pokemon. This can be a really solid buff, pushing some pretty good damage into 1-hit KO thresholds, which is also a really good thing to keep in mind. Even though the supporters provide a ton of energy acceleration, there are a couple other options that we can have in the fire archetype. Blaziken's Fire Starter allows us to attach a fire energy from our discard pile to one of our bench Pokemon. I don't think this is all that powerful, but certainly bear in mind that Torchic does have that very crucial Barrage Ancient trait, which can actually be a build around in some fire archetypes because we have the Technical Machine Evolution. You could actually stick this on a Torchic and get a double evolution turn, going immediately into your stage 2 Pokemon, or just evolving up multiple stage 1s on your board very, very early on. So even though Blaziken is just kind of meh, because it has this amazing Barrage Torchic, it might be worth considering in your deck lists. And then finally, Emboar, it's a Rain Dance style Pokemon on a stage 2. Fire is actually one of the better archetypes to have a Rain Dancer in because, again, we have so many ways to get fire energy out of the deck, but also recover them from the discard pile as well. We naturally have a lot of ways to circulate our fire energy, making Emboar a pretty promising card. Now let's have a look at some of the key attacking Pokemon. You'll notice a lot of these are basics, and that's a really nice identity for the fire archetype, actually, is that you're getting into the mix with your basic Pokemon and keeping your evolutions in the back to maintain your engine quite nicely. What's really good about attacking with basic Pokemon is that they're much much more easily recoverable, and we just have much more search for them throughout the game. Chi-Yu can accelerate some energy in the opening stages, but also is a fantastic revenge attacker. Moltres has free retreat as soon as there's a fire energy attached to it, and can be a great sniping Pokemon. Entei has decent natural bulk and again has a pretty reasonable damage output. Castform is a free retreater and can hit 150 damage, which is a pretty solid number, whilst giving you some extra stadium control over the opponent. Iron Moth can yoink some energy for itself from other Pokemon scattered around your board and have a decent damage output play. There are a couple Volcanions here worth considering. Firestarter is a really solid option, especially if you've gone second, to again accelerate to different threats on your board and has that high heat blast, which isn't a bad option either, considering how much acceleration we actually have in the deck. The Hydro Burn Volcanion has a really good amount of damage here as long as we have a water energy attached in addition to our fire energy. We have a number of special energy which can help out here, making it a pretty easy way to get towards 160 damage, which is really good on a basic. Amazing Rare Reshiram is doing similar things to the Volcanion here, except it deals 270 damage. That's a huge threshold. The energy cost is really wonky though, so oftentimes it's going to need the help of counter energy to get the job done. Heatmore is certainly one of the most impressive attackers that Fire has available to it. The Exciting Flame just does 90 for 3, but if you have 6 energy attached to it, it actually is able to do a 180 damage snipe to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon in addition to the 90 to the face. 6 energy does sound colossal of course, but with the help of Charizard or Emboar, it's actually pretty achievable. It never feels great flipping coins, but Torkoal's damage output potentially is very powerful, and we do also have Victini, which can help us reflip if things have gone wrong. Blacephalon's Fireball Circus requires a lot of setup because we need to have a ton of energy recursion cards that can go back into the hand, but it could be used once or twice during your game just to have a big blow-up option when required. Cinderace is a little more self-sufficient. It can yoink energy for itself, and 190 is also a pretty decent number. And then we have a couple Arcanine that we can potentially choose between. Grand Flame's a great option for making sure we have multiple threats powered up, whereas the latest Arcanine is a little bit greedier, but has that huge 240 damage output threshold that can knock out pretty much anything in format. With the key attacking and engine Pokemon now discussed, I'm going to go over a couple of deck lists which I've been personally toying around with in the Fire type. We're going to start with an archetype I affectionately name Rainbow Burn. That is because we are going to be trying the Amazing Rare Reshiram and Volcanion as some of our crucial attackers. Of course, we will have Chi-Yu sort of working in on certain turns. We have the options of Moltres, we have Entei and Castform in here as well, so we're not necessarily all in on the sort of rainbow energy attacking mons, but this is certainly some of the strongest attacks that we have available. The draw engine that we're going for in the deck list is the Magcargo plus Salazzle combination. You'll notice there's a heavy ball in the deck list. We actually are playing a 3 retreat cost Slugma in addition to the Magcargo, and surprisingly the Reshiram and Volk also have a 3 retreat cost, so this actually accesses a decent number of cards in the deck. Counter Energy is a massive card if we want to get the use from Reshiram. We're playing a lot of the energy accelerators, the Welder, the Blacksmith, Mela, and Raihan as well in the deck list, in addition to VS Seeker. We also have Pokegear and T-Mail in the deck to try and give us great access to these throughout the game. You'll notice as well that I'm playing Counter Catcher. Like I mentioned, because we are often reliant on these other supporter cards, having a smooth over Counter Catcher play can also be fantastic. It can be used alongside some of these accelerators to make sure we always have bounce back potential, or can be used alongside a disruption supporter in the mid to late game, whilst also taking out an engine Pokemon from an opponent. If I was tryharding Fire, this would probably be the direction that I would look towards. However, I have also got this more experimental deck list, which I'm calling Evolution Barrage, because we are utilizing the Torchic. One of the key differences between the two lists is we have many more evolutions in this one, where we have got rid of Salazzle in favor of Delphox and also made room for Charizard for that Burn Brightly option, and it means that we have the star player of Heatmore available in this list. In the best case scenario, we're trying to get Torchic into the active position alongside this Technical Machine evolution. That's why you'll see with Guzmahala here that we have Capch Energy plus Artisan alongside the TM evolution, but we also have Jet Energy as well. That means if we go Guzhala for Artisan, Jet, TM, we can get Torchic into the active position. So provided we already have other basics in play, we can get that Torchic double dip going, which is ideal. There's also Capch Energy, which can be used just on any active Pokemon just to get another Pokemon developed with that Guzhala, which is really solid. There's also the Arven, which is achieving a very similar goal here, where we have Battle VIP plus the TM. It's less likely that you get the Torchic off in this case, but even just getting one evolution straight up into Magcargo and Charmeleon, or getting that Breaks in Charmeleon combination pretty early, is also going to be fantastic for us. This one's a little bit more goofy, a little bit more Exodia, but there's nothing better than using this Heatmore to full effect. It can feel phenomenal. There's also Lux Cape and Silent Lab to really support this Heatmore make sure that you're not getting blocked by Manaphy, Mew, or Mr. Mime, anything like that, and the Luxcape ideally pushing the Heatmore's hit points into a range where it can't be KO'd, meaning we can get double dips on this attack. So that's just 2 examples of some lists that I've been toying with in the Fire archetype. Some of the best things about being a Fire type gym leader is that you have many versatile basic attacking options that notably can be burst onto the board all in one turn thanks to our acceleration. So it's pretty difficult for your opponent to play around all of these options at one point or another. At any moment in a game, we could be offering a spread option, a revenge attack play, and sometimes even 270 damage burst onto the board in one go, and that's really difficult for the opponent to play around. There's also just a lot of good Fire synergy. Almost all of the cards that I put on the potential Fire card slide actually make it into that deck because of how strong the stadium cards are and the supporter cards ultimately become. So there really is great internal synergy. We have good deck thinning naturally, so you're just not bricking towards the mid-game as soon as you've started to thin the deck of these Fire Energy, and you do naturally cycle through the deck quite nicely just because you're thinning these Fire Energy and utilizing them so early in the game. It's also great to just have guarantees in a format with so many one-off cards. Making sure you can cherry-pick it for the right time to utilize these can be huge as well. Many other types don't have anything close to Magcargo's strength, so it's a great boast that Fire has. Some of the weaknesses of playing Fire is that you are kind of locked into these supporter effects. Yes, Blacksmith and Welder are very good cards, but it means you have to be much more timely with your gusting and when you are using your hand disruption supporters, and so long as your opponent is constantly targeting your attackers and getting one-hit KOs in response to you, they can really limit your lines of play, basically forcing you back into a burst acceleration supporter rather than some of this disruption or gust. That kind of goes hand in hand with the glass cannon attackers. Our damage output is really quite solid with most of our Fire guys, but the hit points are all around the sort of 110, 130 threshold. It's quite easy for an opponent to have a back and forth with you, so once an opponent initiates a prize race, it's not very easy for us to deny prizes for the remainder of the game. As long as Delphox isn't developed on your board, your opponent can still go for a disruption supporter, and you can't always protect yourself with Magcargo, obviously if they're playing an N rather than Iono. Magcargo isn't foolproof to some of these hand disruptors, and if we are relying on bouncing back with more and more of these energy acceleration options, if we get hand disrupted out of them, even if we draw into a different supporter card, if it's not going to be that burst acceleration, it's not going to be all that useful and we'll end up not having an attack for the turn. Overall, I think Fire is one of the more challenging archetypes to play in GLC right now. It's not necessarily low power, but I do think a lot of the decision making is taken away from you because of your harsh tie towards these accelerating supporters. If you want to learn more about the GLC, there's going to be links in the description below. There's the official website, Gym Leader Challenge. There's Cardboard Warriors, which is a really useful website, as well as my Cube Koga document with a visual list of the most playable cards in GLC and a few example deck lists from myself as well. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you tomorrow for another one. Cheers.